I Hate Politics is a podcast about a human activity we love to hate. And this is the I Hate Politics candidate interview with Shebra Evans from Montgomery County Board of Education. I'm Sunil Dasgupta, host of I Hate Politics, a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools and streets, and our local governments as they function in diverse, democratic, and sometimes divided societies. As part of the show, we have conversations with local, state, and sometimes federal candidates. Rather than ask them how they stand on a multitude of issues, these conversations go in depth on a few issues. Mail-in ballots for the upcoming May 14th primary elections are out. Soon, it will be early voting. The most important local offices on the ballot in Montgomery County are the 3 Board of Education seats. There are no state or county offices contested this time. Voting for the Board of Education is at large, which means that all voters eligible to vote should vote in all 3 races that are being contested. Districting in the Board of Education races is only for candidacy. You can only run there if you live in the district. Shebra Evans is a 2-term incumbent of the Montgomery County Board of Education from District 4. She is now running for her 3rd term on the board. You can find interviews with other candidates in the I Hate Politics library on all major streaming platforms. Music for this episode comes from 2 piano compositions from Kensington resident Adam Bobrow. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone else who might want to, please email us at producer@ihppod.org. Shebra Evans, welcome to I Hate Politics.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I don't actually hate politics, and I don't think you do either, but I love the name. Good to be here.
Yeah, seems like a lot of people do. You are running for the Montgomery County Board of Education in the primary in May 2024. What do you think this race is about?
You know what? This race this time is about a lot of different things. We're not just coming out of COVID, but as a result of COVID, it has exacerbated a lot of the disparities that we saw in our school system prior to 2019 around our students learning. So literacy and math scores have gone down. We're working to, and we have been showing the progress that our students are making. Is that progress something to really celebrate? No, but we do see math and literacy scores taking a step up. So I think it's the academics of our students. I think this race is about the mental health crisis that our students and even some staff are facing right now. This race is about safety and security. We have students, they have been talking, as well as families have been coming to our board meetings, questioning whether or not we are providing a safe and secure facility for our students to be in, considering some of the different things that we've seen across the country. You've had guns come into the schools. So people don't want to bring up COVID, but I do think that COVID has left some lasting impressions on not only Montgomery County, but just across the country. Some people are not well, right? And they feel as though their backs are up against the wall. And so a lot of what we see playing out in the community is coming into the school walls. So we're trying to manage the behaviors And then, of course, the one thing that is that I can't avoid discussing, the investigation, right? This race, well, I'll say this. I'll start off by saying this. Mistakes were made, right?
Okay, let's talk about the investigations first, because, that's what you mentioned. So you use the phrase mistakes were made, right? That's a passive way of saying things, that somehow mistakes were made by people we don't know.
So I'll clarify that. When I say mistakes were made, I'll say in the area of anonymous complaints and tips, how they were investigated, the consistency in how.
But you were on the board at that time.
I was on the board at that time.
Why is it that you didn't do anything about it?
Because that information was not provided. I did not know.
Who was supposed to provide you that information?
That information should be shared, right? When we have
by whom?
By administration.
Is it Dr. McKnight then, who was the superintendent?
Well, eventually she would get the information if she's the superintendent.
But eventually I would assume that the board would get it too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it has to come through the Department of Compliance and Investigation, and then rise to the levels of HR.
But the Bidelman complaints were over several years. I mean, it's not even like it happened in 6 months or anything.
I hear you. But they were.
There has to be responsibility here, accountability.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But if they come through an anonymous way, and how they're investigated is not a clear process that's followed every single time, or if they're not given
But why was there no policy? Why was there no guidance?
So we have a policy in terms of how you handle complaints, right? In terms of how an anonymous complaint or tip is handled.
So where do you think the failure was?
So in thinking about it, I could say this: based on the recommendations that we were given, having a standard way that you can report a complaint, whether it's anonymous or not, having a way to track all of the investigations, to be able to say, this is in progress, this is complete, or this is being reviewed, that would have been helpful.
Is it the case that they were not being tracked?
I don't believe that all of them were being tracked, which is so based on the recommendations that we got and what we're doing now. We have a website that people can go to. It will show you where complaints are in the process. So I think if we could have had a more clear place, not everybody know. And I'll say this, in how we respond to our community, to our staff, we send emails, we send text messages. We have a website where we say you can go to and be able to do your reporting and do your filing. Not everybody feels comfortable with sharing the information, and not everybody. What I hear people say, staff included, because when we had a meeting with some of our, we have an annual meeting with our unions, we pulled up the web page where you can go to make your complaints. And so even in that moment, when some of us had laptops out to show where you can go to do your complaints, people were not able to easily get to the website, right? And then when they did get to the website, they couldn't find the link or the button that they needed in order to do their reporting. So,
right. One thing is the problem with websites and that kind of thing. But another, in this case, complaints were actually made. People made complaints, right? And it seems that they were not responded to. There's no standard policy for responding to them or for tracking them. Why do you need an external body to tell you to do that?
You don't need an external body to tell you to do that.
So why wasn't it done?
It was what I was going to say to you is that in the event that you don't know where to go, then the external body can point you in the direction of where you need to go. And so for some people where that complained, they were investigated and there was an end result, and maybe there was not an agreement as to what they viewed as. I'm going off of the information that we received at the very end, that when the person filed their complaint and then the investigation happened and they went through the process, that the findings were not matching with what the complainant said.
What do you think is the Board of Education's role? Do you wait for information to come to you? Do you seek information? How do you exercise your governance? And particularly in this context. And if that didn't happen, why not?
So I'll tell you what we do. It is as the board member, as the school board, we are the governing body. And so we get a variety of reports on a regular basis. We get serious incidents reports. We get bullying, harassment. We get sexual harassment. We get a variety of reports. And in those moments, when we get those reports, we're able to ask questions. We ask questions as individual board members. When you're looking at the information on your own, you come up with questions, right? And you can ask in the system to respond to those questions. And then when we get together, I'm able to hear what my colleagues are thinking as well. And sometimes what I'm thinking might match up with somebody else. And sometimes somebody else might come up with something else that maybe I wasn't thinking. So we do get reports. People think that we're just sitting back and we're not doing our job. Absolutely not. We get a variety.
These reports included the Beidelman complaints or not?
No, I've never seen anything in relation to the bottom reports. And I'll tell you some of the things that we've done to.
So are the reports entirely anonymized so you don't know where they're coming from? What I don't understand is that there is a role that the Board of Education plays in governing MCPS.
Mm-hmm.
There were clearly failures within MCPS, no tracking, non-standard responses. So there is a policy failure there that is on the hands of the Board of Education itself and the administration of MCPS. So if this investigation is going to bear true fruit, we need to understand what went wrong.
So I'll say this, and taking it away from the Beidelman incident, what it has allowed us to do is just look at how we do the reporting, how the reporting, like the information that is contained in the report, right, whether it's enough. It's allowed us to look at our hiring practices, our appointments process, interview panels. It's just made us kind of go back and just say, let's take a deeper dive and let's see in this moment, there's always an opportunity when there's a challenge that arises to figure out how can we do things better. And sometimes I'll say this, Sunil, there are look fors and questions that don't come up until a bad situation occurs. When you're in a challenging time or in a serious incident, you often think of things that just didn't come into play before. So I just think it's a time for us to go back and look at our processes, our standard operating procedures in the reporting process, and just how we can take a little bit deeper dive on internal candidates and external candidates. And
so how do you do that? What are you changing to do that?
Sure. So just starting with internal candidates and external candidates during the hiring process. Before you might have asked the question of, your letters or your references, your letter of references or recommendations to people who are referring or recommending you to be in that position. We weren't really doing a deeper dive into people's background.
Why not?
Internet's not the criminal, like not the background checks. I mean, like internet, Google searches.
In the case of Beidelman, and he was promoted, right? So did somebody look at least 5 years in the background on Beidelman?
I believe they did have information on.
And they didn't come up with any complaints?
Obviously not. Obviously not. If he was able to be promoted, a lot of this stuff came out after the investigation. People think that the board was aware of things before. We were not. He would have not been promoted had we had all that information, had we known any of that.
But the incredulous part of that is that you were not aware.
How is that? So I'm going to say this, and I know people are going to hear this and think, we have 25,000 employees, right? And I know that we keep copious records on people, but I did not know.
But you have 207 principals.
207 principals, right? If it's not documented, if it's not in their file, how would we know that?
Okay. You said something very interesting earlier, which is that you think that the people doing the investigations are, they come from education, they have principal background, they're not specialist investigators, and so they might have missed all of this. What changes are you bringing to bring specialists on board so that they can provide you that kind of expertise?
She said, what changes that we're making was, so we're being more intentional about trying to look for people that have that background in investigation. Just the approach to who we use as a recruiter to go and find the people that we're looking for.
So you have an investigator in charge of your compliance division now?
So we had the acting director has a legal background. So she has to look for us. Stacey Hornsby, her last name is escaping me right now. But so we had an acting director in that place, in that position.
You said just a little while ago that you wanted to restore MCPS to its old glory. Can you tell me what are the things that you see most lacking?
I don't know if I see it as lacking. I know there's areas of improvement, but right now I do believe because public trust and confidence is down, that adds to the conversation of who we are and are we still the same MCPS? And what I will say is this, that regardless of how people feel, that there are teachers and administrators and support professionals that are in our school buildings still doing the work. And what we have to get, so prior to the pandemic, what we were working on is the equity accountability model. Dr. Smith and I had gone to, the Maryland School Board Conference to present how Montgomery County is disaggregating our data by race and poverty. There was nobody prior to 2019 that was doing it in that way. So people were really intrigued by how we were able to really get down to the students, the individual students in the classroom, to see how well or not well things were going for them. So we were very courageous and honest about our data does not look the same for Black and brown students that it does for our white and Asian peers. And we want to get to the bottom of it. And then our evidence of learning, where that's our internal accountability system, where we're looking at the progress of our students, how well they're doing in the classroom, the district level, and externally. And so as a result of our students not doing well in literacy and math, particularly after COVID-19, because it was difficult for some of our...
What changes were made to fix that?
So we have the science of reading, getting back to the phonetics piece for our students. And
is reading now taught across MCPS phonetically?
Yes, it is.
Everywhere?
Everywhere. Yes, it is. So during COVID, we had started a pilot with some schools. So those schools were really able, it was less than, I don't have the exact number, but it was no more than 8 schools that were doing the pilot, the science of reading, and they did really well even during COVID-19. And so as we came out, we moved it to more schools, and then now all of the schools are doing it. And we have the professional development that we provided to our teachers.
Right. So tell me, I mean, you're seeing improvement, but the test scores that are publicly available from the state, they are not showing improvement. They are, a little bit improvement, but not really that much. What do you think explains the gap?
Yeah, so we had Dr. Genevieve Floyd come before the board to talk about.
Who is Genevieve Floyd?
Genevieve Floyd, she's over our career readiness. I don't have her exact title, and I should know that. But she's been a real, she's been very instrumental and key.
But I just saw the data that MCPS and BOE sent to the county council, to the education and culture committee. And that data was abysmal.
It was. And she came and talked about that. She came and she talked about that. And she shared with us that.
But so in fact, you were talking about improvement, but there isn't actually improvement.
So there is improvement. And she came to tell us how the test doesn't show, like, it's not as accurate as we would like.
If that is the case, why even bring it up? It's a straw man argument at that point.
No, but you know what, though? But guess what? If we don't bring it up and don't have the conversation to talk about what it looks like versus.
But it is a meaningless test, according to everybody I talked to.
Well, and guess what? I'm not gonna I'm not gonna quote Dr. Floyd. I'm not quoting her at all. But I think that what she's trying to do is do her job and show us.
But her job is to provide measures that are meaningful. That measure that was sent to the Education and Culture Committee is a meaningless measure. It's a straw man.
So then let me ask you a question. We should just kept that information to ourselves. We're trying to be transparent and just show what actually came out.
We talked at length earlier about, sort of the investigations, the lack of tracking, the non-standard approach to anonymous complaints. All of that leads to a lack of transparency.
What I want to say is, when we knew what we knew, we shared that information. And when we came before the county council, what was shared, and when we talked at the board table, what was shared is that in terms of how we handle complaints, there wasn't a consistency, right? There wasn't they were investigated. Anonymous tips were investigated. Complaints have always been investigated. I am not saying that. But when it's anonymous, the follow through could have probably been a lot better. And that's just me. That's my opinion.
But it's not just the follow through, it's the investigation. Because if the investigation had been done, then it would have been clear that there was a problem there and people would act on it. But are you saying then that they investigated, found out that Beidelman had a problem and did not report out?
No, I am not saying that at all. So I'm saying to you, based on the article that was presented in the Washington Post that I read when everybody else read. So when it hit the paper is when I saw it too, that there was an investigation that was done.
Why do you depend on transparency to come from the press? I mean,
I didn't say that, Sunil. I did not say that I was waiting on the press to tell us.
But you did.
No, I just told you that when you read the information that came out in the paper from the Washington Post is when I read that too. I did
right.
Not.
So why does the governing body of a large school district not know that? Isn't that a transparency problem?
That's a lack of communication. That is information that we did not receive, and for some in our school system that they did not have access to as well.
Shebra Evans, thank you for taking the time. Good luck in the campaign.
Thank you, Sunil.
That's two-term Montgomery County Board of Education member Shebra Evans, who is running for her third term now. You can find her on social media at Shebra Evans. Please remember that every voter in Montgomery County gets to vote in all Board of Education races. The BOE voting is at large. Board of Education districts are for candidacy alone. This is a big difference between the County Council and the Board of Education. Music for this episode comes from Kensington resident Adam Bobrow. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone else who might want to, please email us at producer@ihppod.org. I hope you'll listen, like, and share the show as we bring you stories about politics close to you and to your home. See you next time.